understand how far this Orwellian censorship has gone?
I think up until this point, there was always some pushback from the left saying, oh, you're exaggerating, you're pushing it too far. No, it's just an isolated case here or there, or that was necessary. But this is one of those cases that universally, across the board, left and right, everybody has been scratching their heads trying to...
Deputy PM Rayner S. gone. Farage says Labour S. next, while 5 armed officers cuff a comedian for tweets. Is Britain 2025 free or finished? Watch the revolt.
The British police force, are we going to get arrested as soon as we touch down at Heathrow?
Well, the answer is, I don't know. And that's part of the problem. We don't know what we're allowed to say. So everyone is in some way kind of self-censoring and looking over their shoulder about what's going to happen in some state of paranoia. We've had Lucy Connolly, you probably heard that name, who's been jailed for tweets. We've had Peter Lynch, who was jailed for protesting just for holding a fairly innocent placard. And he eventually committed suicide in prison. So we've had multiple situations where free speech and the establishment has been cracking down on ordinary citizens. And this is probably the worst and the most climatic incident that's happened. And I hope it's going to be a line in the sand to actually say enough is enough. Now, the Met Police and Mark Rowley, they've blamed the government and said this is about your legislation. But really, the Met Police have been played by trans activists.
Yes.
And the reality is that this is about common sense. This isn't about legislation. This report was passed through multiple chains of command at multiple levels of the police force, and at every level they escalated to the extent that 5 armed police officers needed to meet Graham Linehan at Heathrow Airport to arrest him. I mean, this is absolutely insane, and this is the reason why Nigel Farage. I mean, this is great timing because Nigel Farage was on his way to Washington to actually talk about free speech, and he put it to the American establishment and just to say this is a crisis, warning them and trying to humiliate and also put pressure on Keir Starmer to actually make the right decision. Now, he was wildly condemned as being unpatriotic and talking down Britain on the international stage. But I would say what's unpatriotic is to stand by in silence and watch as the fundamental principles that made your society are being undermined by government that, again, will not listen. And Nigel Farage is being absolutely patriotic by getting out there and appealing to the likes of Donald Trump and JD Vance to actually stand up for us. We feel like we've been held hostage by our own government.
But in the Myron, in the case of Graham Linehan, it's almost too late. Have a listen to him here. He's basically saying he can't live in Britain any longer. Have a listen.
The police state and the police work for trans activists and left-wing lunatics like that, and they don't work for the people anymore. I met a nice policeman there, but they're isolated because the rest of the police force is just completely captured by gender ideology. So, yeah, I don't want to live here anymore because of that.
So, Myron, what hope for Britain if someone like Graham, who's one of the great comic talents, I mean, who will be next? Will it be John Cleese kicked out or whatever? I mean, this is really serious stuff. Do the majority of Brits understand how far this Orwellian censorship has gone?
I think up until this point, there was always some pushback from the left saying, oh, you're exaggerating, you're pushing it too far. No, it's just an isolated case here or there, or that was necessary. But this is one of those cases that universally, across the board, left and right, everybody has been scratching their heads trying to work out what's going on. And I think Mark Rowley, who's head of the Met Police, is actually embarrassed. He's been played and he's been weaponized by the trans activists. And I think it's now clear that what's happened in the police force, as well as the universities and the judiciary, is that, yes, they've been captured. There's been an over-academization, if you like, of the police force, where they see the university woke ideology as being more important than what's actually going on the ground. Understand, if my house got burgled last year, nobody came. I mean, 2 days later, somebody came and then looked around, gave me a number, but nothing happened. And phones, we're the phones are getting stolen all over the place in London. And we're the capital of that in Europe. And so all across the board, crime is soaring. Knife crime is soaring. Shoplifting is soaring. But yet we have 5 armed police officers coming to Heathrow Airport for tweets. And when you weigh that up, you start to realise there is something absolutely...
Angela Rayner's walkout is not a polite Westminster kerfuffle. it is the moment the Labour coalition finally cracked. The hard left thought Starmer needed them more than they needed him. They were wrong, and now they know it. When a deputy prime minister who swore by working-class solidarity can't explain why she dodged 40k in stamp duty on a council house sale, every traditional Labour voter in Greater Manchester and the Welsh Valleys hears the same thing: we are the new elite, you're the new peasantry. That is why the Red Wall will not come back to Labour in 2027, no matter how many times Starmer puts on a high-vis vest and pretends to like beer. The stamp duty dodge itself is a microcosm of 21st century socialism. In Britain, preach redistribution, practice evasion. HMRC data show that in the last decade, the top 1 of earners in London and the South East underpaid at least $1.8 billion in property taxes using exactly the same main residence flip that Rayner tried. None of them resigned, because none of them pretended to be the voice of the poor. Rayner did, and that is why her fall feels so good to the very voters Labour still needs. But the real earthquake is inside the party. Rayner was the last bridge between two tribes that hate each other: the Islington social liberals, who bankroll the party, and the old union stewards who knock on doors. Without her, the Unite and GMB money will demand a hard-left candidate in the deputy leadership race, while the Blairite donors will push for someone like Wes Streeting. Whichever side loses will walk, probably into a new party or into an alliance with the Greens or the SNP. First past the post punishes splits viciously. A four-way split on the left hands Nigel Farage, a 150-seat parliamentary bloc, without ever needing more than 28 of the national vote. That is not fantasy, it is exactly how the Canadian Conservatives took power in 2004, when the Liberals, NDP and Bloc Becoys tore each other apart. Meanwhile, the Tories, still dazed after their 2024 wipeout, have learned nothing. Instead of hoovering up disillusioned blue-collar voters, they are about to elect another Notting Hill libertarian who wants to talk about crypto and Singapore-on-Thames. The membership wants culture war, not corporate tax cuts. If the final ballot is Kemi Badenoch versus Robert Jenrick, the party will split between free-market globalists and national populists. That split is Farage's second gift. Reform UK becomes the official opposition within 12 months, and every seat north of Birmingham becomes a three-way marginal where Reform squeezes both legacy parties. Starmer's reshuffle proves he still thinks the problem is optics, not policy. Moving Yvette Cooper from the Home Office to the Foreign Office is like moving the deck chair from the starboard side of the Titanic to the port side. Cooper let net migration hit 1.2 million last year, the highest figure since the Norman conquest. Now she will lecture Eastern Europe on border security, while Britain's own coastline is a revolving door for Albanian criminals and small boat traffickers. David Lammy's promotion is even worse. Here is a man who once compared the US Republican Party to the KKK and who thinks the greatest threat to Britain is carbon racism. Vladimir Putin is not shaking in his boots, he is laughing, because he knows a government that cannot even define a woman will never stand up to a real tank division. The economy is already screaming. The Bank of England printed 450 billion during lockdowns, inflating the money supply by 15 in 2 years. Inflation stayed above 8 for 18 months, wiping out a decade of real wage growth for the bottom third of workers. The IMF now predicts Britain will have the lowest growth in the G7 for the next 5 years. Labour's answer is more tax. The top marginal rate is already 62 once you add national insurance, yet the Treasury still runs a 120 billion deficit. Every serious economist knows the only way out is growth, yet Labour clings to net zero targets that shut down North Sea gas and drive energy prices to 40p per kWh, triple the US rate. British Steel is about to close its blast furnaces in Scunthorpe because the carbon credits make production cheaper in India. We will import steel made with coal, ship it halfway round the world, and pat ourselves on the back for cutting emissions. That is not green virtue, it is economic suicide. Illegal migration is the match that lights the whole powder keg. Last year, 45,000 people arrived in small boats, 70 of them young men from Albania, Afghanistan, and Iran. They are not fleeing war, they are fleeing poverty. Albania is a NATO country safer than Chicago. Yet under the Modern Slavery Act, each claimant gets put up in a 3-star hotel, 50 a week pocket money and free health care, while their asylum case crawls through a backlog of 170 files. The total cost, tops 8 million a day, enough to build a new hospital every month. Local councils in Kent and Lincolnshire now face 300 million unfunded bills for interpreters, schooling and social care. When working-class mums see their own kids crammed into classrooms of 35 while new arrivals get one-to-one English lessons, the word treason is not hyperbole, it is dinner-table talk. The police reaction to Graham Linehan's arrest is the canary in the coal mine. Britain now has 900 specialist hate officers, more than the number of officers dedicated to car theft, even though car theft affects 110,000 citizens a year. The College of Policing's own guidance